joint special meeting of the Millwood City Council and the Millwood Planning Commission. It is Tuesday, December 9th, 2025 at 5 p.m. And Kinsey, could you do a roll call of the Planning Commission first and then the City Council?
Sure. Commissioner Ankney?
Here.
Commissioner Rickard?
Here.
Commissioner Molitor?
Here.
Commissioner Vesey?
Here.
Now Council. Councilmember Vesey? Here. Councilmember Culler?
Present.
Councilmember Sander?
Present.
Councilmember Stravens?
Here.
And Councilmember Van Hees is not.
Councilmember Van Hees is engaged in his employment right now and will unfortunately miss this portion of the special meeting, or tonight's meeting. So, we have a quorum of the Planning Commission. Yes. We have a quorum of the City Council. And so at this time, we will turn the meeting over to Amanda Tanyo for her presentation on the 2026 periodic update.
So now that we're done with the majority of the comp plan, minus the climate portion that's still hanging out there, next step is digging into the development regulations. That's already began with the critical areas ordinance. We got great reviews already back on that, and so I'll be incorporating just a few changes, bringing that back to Planning Commission, and then on to the remainder of the development regulations and the climate element. Our deadline, just a reminder for everything, is December 2026, so we are 1 year away. All right, so if you recall, I presented a year or two ago now about the checklist that we had to do to go over all the update requirements for our codes. They just prepared another new checklist. I went through it, not too much changed on our end, but essentially this is where we're at right now with the one item on the comp plan that has to go in this year is the climate change and resiliency, and then all the sections of the development regulations minus shoreline and resource. I also need to go through all the applicable sections of the Millwood Municipal Code, make sure we have consistency, clarity, correct cross-references, those kinds of things. Okay. So where we are on the timeline here is we are right smack in the middle, and we are perfectly on schedule. So no adjustments need to be made. May or may not follow exactly the adopted critical areas ordinance timeline. I'm going to see how it goes, and I may end up just lumping that into the other development regulations for simplicity. But either way, we are right on schedule. Okay. So, as you know from my many presentations over the past couple of years here, there's many new housing element requirements. Two of the items I wanted to highlight is making adequate provisions for all housing needs. We started that in the comp plan. We have to continue it into the development regulations. And it's also addressing the racially disparate impacts that we document in the comp plan, carrying that over. Okay. So in the comp plan, we also had to identify what were barriers to housing development. What we came up with for Millwood was, unfortunately, our development regulations. We do have to add in the variety of middle housing types as permitted uses. Possibly reducing minimum lot sizes. That was something that Commerce discussed with me because we're inconsistent with our bulk density standards. I talked it through with them and I said, we'll see how it plays out through the review process. And then possibly reducing off-street parking requirements, although I think we're probably okay unless something changes on that again. Of course, updating the ADU regulations, and then possibly reducing setbacks, lot coverage, impervious surface, although from what I heard from the public, the thing they liked the most were the larger setbacks. Planning Commission liked the lot coverages, so I've tried to preserve those as we go through. Process obstacles. I have to make sure we go through and update all of our processing to be consistent with the new state regulation and make it as streamlined as possible. We have to offset the limited land availability, of course, by incorporating the middle housing and providing infill through our development regulations. And then we also have to address funding gaps. And this is actually something that just came up in a court case. I cannot remember, I believe it was Mercer Island, actually. They lost to the Growth Management Hearings Board because they had all these things that needed to be done, but they didn't actually do them. is the abbreviated version of it. So if we're saying that we need some incentives for housing in downtown Millwood, we have to figure out how to do that as part of the development regulations. And then, of course, continuing to coordinate with Spokane Transit. We have no problem there. Next. So just a little reminder on the high points, some of the Washington State requirements were development standards for the selected middle housing types, and those cannot be more restrictive than what it is for single family. Permit and environmental review processes for middle housing also have to be the same as those for single family. Design review for middle housing is limited to administrative design review, but we can have it, and we'll talk about that in the scenarios. And then within the UGAs, a minimum of 2 ADUs are allowed on all lots that meet the minimum lot size in zoning districts to allow single-family homes. And that's been around for a while, so incorporation of the ADU standards should be fairly simple. How the comp plan addressed implementation for housing infill. Just a few examples. Number 27, evaluate and improve if necessary our zoning regulations related to housing density and type to ensure compatibility with our historic neighborhoods, while also addressing and mitigating any of the racially disparate impacts and that regulations may have on housing access and affordability. Number 28 was evaluate development regulations to remove impediments to the development of low and moderate income housing. Number 38, remove any local policies and or regulations that have been determined to result in racially disparate impacts, displacement, and exclusion in housing. And number 39, update zoning, development, and land division regulations to allow for infill development consistent with neighborhood scale and form. So also from the comp plan, just a quick overview of each one of the zones. Basically, in summary, UR1, we're looking at ADUs. We're looking at duplexes, triplexes, cottage housing, stacked flats, courtyard apartments, and other small scale that are compatible in scale and form with single family residences, while permitting a minimum of 2 units per lot. There was a lot of discussion on the stacked flats and courtyard apartments. Unfortunately, those were required by the state because they can be in 2-unit configurations. So, UR2 is basically the same as, go ahead. Basically the same as UR1, but we can look additionally at the historic district for some increased guidelines there, and it also incorporates in fourplexes in UR2. Next. UR3, of course, is our multifamily zone, and so that adds in additional higher density uses, including the townhomes and multifamily. Next. C1 has already had a variety of residential in it. It was elected to actually clamp that down a little bit and put it towards mixed use commercial and residential so that we don't utilize all the land for commercial or for residential that could be commercial as well. And then also incorporating in the hotels, motels, because we have them, we have to incorporate in the temporary emergency housing in that zone as well. And then C2, of course, preservation of the historic district and playing off that, utilizing mixed use, so commercial with the residential, and then making sure that we can incorporate in the infill, but also preserving the standards. And I want nothing different there other than the temporary and emergency housing. Okay. Just a reminder, the reason we're plugging right along is if we do not get this adopted by December 2026, we get preempted by the Tier 3 model ordinance. A lot of the language that I'm working on that'll come back to Planning Commission is based off the model ordinance. Good news is the lot coverage is consistent. They had 40% as the basically the most you can have. We have that, so we're okay there. Our setbacks are more than what the model ordinance is, so if we got preempted, we'd lose our proposed setbacks. I did check with Commerce after the most recent legislation that came through on different setbacks for upper stories. It's a brand new thing. We are okay because Millwood looks at it as the entire structure based on height. It isn't under that same caveat, so we aren't going to be restricted under that new legislation. So go ahead. All right, so now we're going to talk about some of the ways to get homeownership in homes in Millwood. Residential lot splitting, this is a brand new provision that came in, and essentially what you're doing is you're taking an existing residential lot, such as the really deep UR1 lots or the really wide UR2 lots, and you are administratively splitting them into 2 lots, so now you can build another small single family next door. That is the summary of it. I will go over more detail in the scenarios. The one thing I have to double check on is there is an exemption that says when you do an administrative lot split, you do not have to fully comply with all the Tier 3 requirements. How that plays in exactly, I have to look at a little bit more, but my understanding is we can limit it to the total number of units allowed on the one lot prior to it being split. So even though you split it off, you don't have to have 2 units on that new lot. That's how I understand it, but I'm going to get more verification as we go through. Go ahead. Unit lot subdivisions, I've gone over this one before, but this is the other new one, and essentially it's to allow condo type home ownership, similar actually to what was proposed with Magnolia Village with the manufactured homes. And the lots essentially can be as small as the individual units, or they can give a little bit of private open space, but you're looking at it based on the entire parent parcel. So there are no setbacks and stuff for the individual units other than the perimeter itself for the parent. Next. Planned unit developments. As I went through the code, I realized this is a regulatory tool that Millwood never took advantage of. It's been around forever, but it's another one that we can put in the toolbox and utilize. We don't have, obviously, very many big parcels. You're looking probably the Magnolia, 2 pieces there, the 2-acre off of the access road off of Trent there, and I think there's one other somewhat large one over in UR2. But PUDs are an option where you can give internal flexibility while preserving the overall setbacks and stuff, similar to a unit lot subdivision, but geared towards definitely ownership and individual lots. So now I'm going to go through some housing scenarios, and at the end I kind of want to hear feedback. So what I did was take everything we developed in the comp plan and put it into real life scenarios and how that would play into amendments to the development regulations. So this first one, totally my creation. Nobody has reached out to me about it. It was just an easy lot to do, so that's why I utilized it. We have an example, UR1 lot. The lot is approximately 64 feet wide, possibly 65. I had to do a quick measurement, but it is a split of one of the original Grandview Acres lots. In this scenario, it already has a driveway going up the side that's about 12 feet wide. That driveway would continue back to service 2 duplex units in the back. It would be done via unit lot subdivision, so you'd have 3 units in this proposal on the one big lot, and nothing would need to occur on the UR1 development regulations. However, I did highlight the minimum front lot line width because this lot isn't what's in the standards right now. It's already less, and there's about, I want to say about half the lots in UR1 are not in the 80-foot range. Some are bigger, and quite a few of them are smaller. In the lowest was, I believe, 50, 51 feet wide, going up to 60, 65, and 70 feet wide. And so this one, actually, other than adopting unit lot subdivisions, didn't require any changes to the code. A couple other things you're going to see redlined as we go through is the heights on stories. This has actually come up many times in our reviews. What constitutes 1 story? What's 1.5? What's 2? The easier way, I think, is going to be either adding what the height is. So I did a ton of research on the building code and stuff and what's considered a 1 story, 1.5, and 2. I even looked at graphics we could include. So either adding 1 story is up to 20 feet, 1.5 to 28, I believe that is. I need higher quality glasses here, apparently. There we go. 28 and 2 story up to 35, or just use the height altogether in order to determine the increased setback based on the height. The other thing was noting that the building height maximum of 35 feet. This is also consistent with the Tier 1 model ordinance, so we don't have an issue there. The ordinance does not allow you to go less than 35 feet is your maximum building height, though. Go ahead, Kinsey. Okay, next one. This is actually one that somebody did reach out to me to ask about splitting the lot. I said, currently you do not meet a minimum frontage requirement in order to split the lot, even though you have road frontage. So in order to create a separate lot in the rear of this parcel, it would need to be a 50-foot minimum front lot width. That would of course be the lowest that's over there right now, and I think there's only a couple parcels that are that way. And then the minimum lot area would either need to go down to match the bulk density, or what I'm hearing a lot of jurisdictions doing, including I believe Spokane County, is proposing just going not applicable on minimum lot areas. Because they're leaving it up to the scale and the form and utilizing the setbacks and the lot coverages. So if you have a 5,000 square foot lot, you've got to meet all the lot coverage and the setback requirements, and that's going to dictate how big your unit's going to be. So it's a little bit of a reverse thought process. So this would be a little more extreme of these scenarios. But it would allow, because it's an administrative lot split, as I read the legislation, you could limit it to the 4 units that would be allowed on this one big parcel. And so whether the parent parcel wants to be able to add another ADU or something in, or they want to give it to the child parcel, either one, it could be restricted to the 4 units total between the 2 parcels. And it doesn't have to be the 2 units of middle housing on the new parcel. It could be a single family, or it could have an ADU or 2 with it. So, next. Everybody knows Magnolia Village, but I'm just throwing it out there because this was the original plan for Magnolia Village. And the next slide that we're going to go to is no surprise to the neighbors, because I've already talked with them. Go ahead. But it was a little surprise to the developers because I used it as an example. So they're still considering utilizing now a unit lot subdivision provision when that comes in, and they're looking at they're not really modular homes. They're stick-built homes, but they're kit-built homes, and so all the lumber and everything comes in as one, and then it's erected on site. By a unit lot subdivision, then they could still maintain ownership of the entire development and condominiumize each one of the units. But I said I wanted to use theirs as an example of what you could do with a PUD as well. So if you wanted to do traditional lots instead of a unit lot subdivision, and you used a PUD example, the outlines in blue would be your individual lots around each one of the units. So they would all have front yard space, mostly driveway, but front yard space, and then they would have rear yard space. The other thing you can do with a PUD standard is give them flexibility on the interior, but create a perimeter exterior, so no matter how the units are oriented, it would always be a 25-foot setback from the adjoining neighbors. And so that's the kind of flexibility you can do with PUDs. In the blue on the right, I've made some suggestions where you can provide that flexibility by saying interior sides are per building code requirements. So they could be together with firewalls, basically separated by just a walkway or something, but they still have to have firewalls. Or they could be further apart, but they would have to meet building code requirements. You can also work with the minimum front lot widths. You could have NA in a PUD, or you could go down to 20 feet, which would be like a driveway. You can see where when you have a curve like this, it gets a little creative accessing those corner lots, and obviously didn't draw them perfectly, that's why I kind of hatched over, but you'd have to take consideration when you have curves how that plays in on your front lot widths too. So this is another idea that we can utilize that allows for the private open space and the home ownership while still providing for infill. So, next one. Okay, now we are into UR2, and I chose one example in the historic district, and I chose another example not in the historic district. Why it's in red, this is using an administrative lot split again. Why it's in red is because in the UR2 zone where it has the historic district, the UR3 zone where it has the historic district, we can implement guidelines based on what the commission Historic Preservation Commission has put together, and incorporate those into the development regulations, so that we really are looking at scale and form and how it plays into the overall design that was historically built with. We can do it in the other zones as well, but we can pay a little more attention to the historic aspect in the overlay district. So in an administrative lot split on this one, the underlying lot width was 50 feet. This proposal takes that to 40 feet, so drops it just a little bit in order to take care of some of the wide lots and allowing those to split off. Same thing, I highlighted the minimum lot area that you could drop down to the bulk density, or you could just say NA. It's totally up to Millwood how you want to do it, but it was something Commerce brought up. And in this scenario, the parent lot, lot number 1, would be about a 9,700 square foot lot. Utilizing the 1 unit per 3,600 square feet, it would be the single family home with 1 to 2 ADUs. 4 units total between the whole thing. And so lot number 2, administrative lot split, would be a 4,300 square foot lot, 1 unit per 3,600 equals a single family home or a single family home with ADUs, but no more than the 4 total. And so you're giving the opportunity to have a separate lot that can be purchased in lieu of somebody building just a cottage or more ADUs in the back. All right. The UR2 infill scenario, now we're using, you could do unit lot subdivision. This is another one I've actually talked to the property owner on. This one would allow at the bulk density 11 units total. Unit lot subdivision could add the condo type ownership, or you could look at the opportunity to short plat because it's a fairly large piece. In order to do a short plat, of course, you would have to adjust the minimum lot area, because again, that's where we keep coming up with, and the minimum front lot width. I will bring up, you'll see it used to be frontage. As part of the infill, we have to change it to front lot width in order to allow the flexibilities to have the rear infill. So not everything will be on a public street anymore. Some of them will be accessed by driveways, and that would be where your utilities are. So it would be a driveway and utility access easement that would go to the rear of the lot, for example. So in this scenario, we would have, with a short plat, we would have 3 lots, the parent lot, number 1, the second lot, number 2, and the third lot, number 3. And I utilized a 1,000 square foot footprint, which is what's consistent with the parent lot home, and provided an example of a middle housing type that could fit in, and that's the picture on the lower right there. So it's a 2-story with a basement of a duplex, or you could consider if it was a triplex if you had a living unit in the basement. And it's consistent in the form and design with the window coverage and door coverage on the front. And that is something that the model ordinance allows for, is setting up design standards like that, where you can have a percentage of windows and doors on the fronts of the unit. And it's something I would recommend incorporating in to fit with the scale and the form. Go ahead. And then our final scenario is jumping over to C1, C2. And of course, this is a parcel that's been looked at a ton. Everybody knows it has deed restrictions on it, so it's very, very limited. I've gone through those deed restrictions, and it does not, in the way I read it, of course, it's a covenant type thing, so it's not a city enforcement, but the way I read it, it would not prohibit residential with mixed use on it. So I use this as an example. The one downfall we have in the current code is there's no prescriptive allowance for horizontal mixed use. There's vertical, but there's not horizontal. So if we broaden the code a little bit and treat C1 and C2 similarly in the development regulations when it comes to mixed use, then we could allow for horizontal or vertical mixed use and give a little more flexibility for infill in those situations. The suggested language on this would be to take the language out of C1 and put a reference to that section that is actually under supplemental regulations anyway, but it was only being used for C2. And then call out that residential uses are permitted as mixed use, combined in the same development with any of the permitted uses. For buildings that front Argonne Road, Euclid Avenue, or Trent Avenue, non-residential uses must front the public right-of-way. However, residential uses are permitted on upper floors and on the ground floor, and then it's carrying over the same language of the 50% maximum on that. And the interesting thing about this piece is by allowing the horizontal mixed use or vertical, either one, but the horizontal really fits well. It is truly acting as the buffer that's described of the C2 zone, because then the next zone adjacent to it is the multifamily, the UR3 residential, and then it goes into the UR2s. So, go ahead. And this is a really envisioning thing. This summer I had a chance to go back to my high school reunion, and we stayed in DuPont, Washington. I don't know if you've heard of DuPont, but it's a small company town, very similar to how it was set up like Millwood, beginning in the early 1900s. It evolved with the Weyerhaeuser doing a development and then evolved further to make sure they preserved the company town area, as they called it, and that was known as the Village. That is on the Register of Historic Places. This is an amazing little town here. There's hotels behind this mixed-use apartment here, and then that's a big park to the left. But DuPont's a great example of mixed-use development in a historic company town. And that building right there would be something that we could do in C1, C2, where you have commercial on the main floor, and then you would have residential above. Obviously, this is a 4-story. It is allowed if it's a vertical mixed use in C2, and it would be allowed in C1 as well. So I provided this example to kind of show real life. You didn't want to see my sketches. All right. So I am ready for questions, comments, and remarks. What do we do? Yay, half hour.
So, Chair Ankeny, do you have any questions from yourself or the Planning Commission for Amanda to start?
I don't have anything, is any minor. We've been over this.
Yeah, did I do anything inconsistent with what the direction of the comp plan was?
No, my question is, we've got these lots,
Mhm.
and you're talking about there's a maximum of so many on the lot, and then we split it, but it still is the maximum of the old lot. That's a whole nother, seems to me that's a whole nother level of record keeping, where historically you've gotta figure out, yes, homeowner, you have a lot, you own this, but it used to be part of this lot, therefore you have different rights than the person next door to you on the other side.
And how is that tracked? It's a deed restriction on the title. So we go through and record something like a title notice when the split occurs, so it's forever carried over on the title. It'd be the same thing for like a PUD where they'd have the covenants, similar to Magnolia Village example, where that gets recorded, so it stays on the title that there were covenants associated with the property.
Now, aren't covenants not, aren't they like a civil matter?
They are, but the city can require them and state in there what at a minimum needs to be included in them, and then require them to be recorded as part of a final plat or a final PUD plat or subdivision. Short plat. So you can require them to be recorded, and so it becomes a title notice or deed restriction, just like anything else. So it follows the land.
But when it comes to getting permission for yet another unit, the city's gotta step in and say, sorry, we can't allow that.
Yes.
So that becomes, that's not really a civil thing, that's a,
Yeah, as far as
So
the
it's a
unit
little-
counts and the density goes,
Yeah.
that's with the city regulations. Yeah, and so I would, I'll give you a what if. So we'll use that example. Can you go back to that UR1 example? Or actually go to the UR2, it's closer, so just up a little bit, the historic one, that one. So let's say that these folks that you guys allowed it to go to a 40-foot lot width, these folks came in and requested an administrative lot split so that they could sell the rear of the property. In that case, when we record that split, we would record a title notice with it that says it would be limited to this total between these two parcels, and that these standards or whatever are in play, and then that would follow through with the title. So anytime somebody sold the property, 20 years, 50 years, whatever, it would carry over with the title.
And then the original people that are doing the lot split, do they get to choose? Oh, we want
Yeah.
this many of the units kept with ours, and we're only selling so many potential.
Yeah, whoever's proposing, so if lot one would like to eventually, right now it's just a single family home. Say they have a couple grandkids and they wanna be able to put 2 ADUs in the back. So they say, we want 3 units in there. That means this one, lot 2, gets 1.
Yeah, okay.
That's the way I understand it. I'm gonna run these scenarios through Melissa with Commerce, make sure I have a full understanding that we're correct before we start proposing changes.
But you have to establish that right at the split where it's deeded that way.
Now, I will caveat, of course, state legislation changes. Nobody thought 20 years ago we were at where we're at now. And so obviously if legislation changes, it could change the scenarios. But where we're at now, this is how I interpret it.
Further down the road, if they change legislation, but it's already as a part of the deed, that trumps that?
Yeah, the state legislation would. So I believe it would. So let me do an example. My neighborhood has covenants. It's a slightly newer neighborhood, about 20 years old. Right now, state legislation is not going back and saying that my neighborhood has to allow ADUs. They don't right now. But there has been talk that that may change. So a covenant is recorded on the deed that these are restrictions that we buy into when we build there. When the state comes through and makes a change, they already have on xeriscaping, solar, there's one more and I can't remember what it was. Those have already caveated that if your covenants say that you can't have these, or there's a deed restriction that says you can't, well, the state now says you can. So it voids that provision. Satellite dishes, I think that was the other one. And so I'm guessing in the future, ADUs at least are gonna go under that same idea. But it hasn't happened yet.
That would kind of go along with our racial exclusion.
Yeah.
So, with no other questions from the planning commission for Amanda, is there questions from the council on all this interesting stuff? Mr. Culler.
Has Commerce finalized all the ADU and setback rules, or are those still in
Commerce is, ADUs are done. They have been done for a few years. In fact, I think I actually did the first ADU ordinance in the state. It was a little town over in Pierce County. And so that one's easy. Everything dealing with tier 3s is pretty well finalized, but every now and then there's little tweaks that come up, and this last legislative session had a few little tweaks.
So the lot split, and what was the other one that just came out?
So these ones, the administrative lot split and the unit lot subdivision.
And those take effect?
We're gonna have them take effect with ours because it's the only way we can do our infill. But I believe legally we had to have it adopted 6 months after the periodic update deadline, which was June 2027. But my plan is to just incorporate it all at once.
Mr. Sander?
So, when we have the development standards, would they include the water sewer standards?
We do have sections in the Millwood Municipal Code that have the water sewer provisions in them, pipe sizing, those kinds of things. Those are also discussed at pre-application conferences.
Because I think that statewide has become a real headache. You know, okay, is this?
Yeah, and
especially with the auxiliary units.
yes, and I believe it was unit lot subdivisions. I covered this in a previous presentation, and I know I sat down a while ago with staff. I believe it was unit lot subdivisions that actually got real specific on how you have to do the utilities. And yeah, it was unit lot subdivisions, and so we'll have to incorporate the language they require.
In some places, even just a duplex became a major issue.
Yes.
Is that 1 meters or 2 meters?
Yes, and that's what it says in the and that's actually a perfect example, because a unit lot subdivision could be potentially used to split a duplex. I have had at least a couple people reach out to me and say, hey, we would like to split our duplex, and I'm like, oh well, great, other than your frontage it won't meet. Well, how do we adjust that? Well, just give us a little time. And then what do we do from here? Well, unit lot subdivision would be your method to do it. And so that's another thing I have to keep in the back of my mind when we're developing these standards, is a duplex split to a unit, to individual ownerships.
So on this example,
Mm-hmm.
40 feet is not very big for, is that because it's got a frontage on the side?
So it's, well, 40 foot, so this one happens to have frontage, but if it was, let's say, it wouldn't happen, obviously, because it's not big enough, but say that was an existing lot that was 40 foot wide, and you split it to the back, so you had a front and a back, it would still be a 40 foot front lot line.
Okay.
Yeah. And it takes it down 10 feet. From where it's at. UR1 was proposed to take down 20 feet from where it's at. The 40 foot, I believe, was more consistent with what they had in the Tier 3 ordinance, if not even a little high. Tier 3 goes down, I think, 20 to 30, but I think 40 was the minimum, I think, in that one.
Most of those tier 3s are now 25s.
Yeah. So to use past experience in Liberty Lake, and this was clear back, we had townhomes, for example. And so we allowed a 25 foot lot width with a 15-foot flanking yard. And so you'd have 3 townhomes, 0 lot line attached, 15-foot flanking yard, and each frontage of those was 20 or 25 feet wide. And so they were like this, it was deep, and then there was a private yard in the back off of an alleyway.
I think this all this work really, I'm missing a word here. It stresses the importance of your office and willing to put out ideas rather than giving somebody a stack of papers and say, come back with your proposal.
Yeah, it's
No.
in order to really utilize the scale and form provisions to make sure these units and stuff fit in, it's best for the city to say what that needs to be. And then we don't have abnormalities, that you're driving down, whoa, what happened there, kind of thing. By having the design standards and stuff incorporated
It also
in, you can have it
allows
fit.
the person, be it the owner or the owner's consultant,
Mhm.
to not get too far down the road to find out, oops, there's the basic issue here.
One of the options that came up in ways to reduce barriers to affordable housing was also having example plans for ADUs. And so I was going to see if that was something the city of Millwood would be interested in exploring. And that makes it really easy. We get a plan approved that meets our design, scale, and form. Get it approved through the city of Spokane Valley on the building side. Somebody can come in and say, hey, I want to build an ADU. Can I see your example plans? We have 2 or 3. They say, I want to do that one. And they have a permit like that, because all they have to do is a site plan review, essentially.
I would think that would be an excellent idea for us, maybe because I think at this point in time, we don't have a lot of developers coming in to buy something with their thoughts of what they're going to do. It's probably the existing homeowner that might.
And we've had a ton of interest in ADUs.
From existing homeowners. That's where the examples would be.
Yeah. Okay.
It'd be good for everybody rather than, relying on a consultant to dream up something.
And it also makes it more cost efficient for the residents too. So if you have a retired couple that either want a little extra income or they want a place for the grandkids to be able to afford to live, they can come in and pick out one of the pre-approved plans and do it a whole lot more efficiently than having an architect have to draw up construction notes.
They're not required, but if you wanna save time and money.
Yeah.
I agree, that makes sense. Very nice presentation, that was very clear.
So man, have you been informing citizens and homeowners that our ADU rules are changing? Okay.
Yes. And they're like, when? I'm like, by December 2026. And it's not just ADUs, it's the unit lot subdivisions, it's the administrative, it's everything I presented. I may have chose like this is just a random lot. I chose because it was easy to do an example. But we have a lot of people that have reached out that they don't want the big lots anymore. They love the idea of having a small garden area like in the back with that duplex idea or something, but they don't want to maintain the entire acre or something.
So I know we touched just briefly on the water connections, but we're gonna make provisions for all that, right? Cause like, for instance, I have an acre up on Argonne and it has a mother-in-law that had a bathroom installed, but the bathroom's not hooked up to it, so you legally cannot, you know, hook it up. And so would we be doing that, especially as people are coming in and pointing at plans and turning their houses into duplexes and
Yeah.
triplexes?
I'll
What
be
about
working-
vertical too? What if they don't wanna subdivide, they just wanna create
Yes.
more spaces inside their house?
So can you go to the next UR2 example? So I think everybody knows this is Shireen's lot. I actually sat down and talked with her and we went over what the options were for this lot. And one of the things I said you could do, because you have a rancher right now, I said if you don't want to go out further, you could go up. And so she could take that and raise it and have a stacked flat or a duplex that's 2-story on top. So you have one unit and then you have the other. She could also convert the barn to an ADU. And so those are all options that we'll be looking at in the future.
Other questions?
I think that'd make your job a little, you know, it's a lot of work. But
It's a lot of work now, it'll be
it's gonna
easier
fun
later.
work. Rather than going back and correcting something that's already
Yeah.
cost money.
And actually, by doing this presentation, it really allowed me to visualize what all these different things mean and how they played in together so that we didn't get 6 months down the road and be like, oh, wait a minute, this isn't going to work, you know. And so hopefully this really helps envision what the direction we're going.
Amanda, thank you very much. We appreciate you giving the update on all this, and we know Planning Commission has their work cut out for them. We have council and commission remarks. Before we do that, I do want to say, I think Planning Commission or council might notice we only have 4 planning commissioners. I reviewed the last meeting, and there seems to be some level of concern on the planning commission as to why Ms. Wu is not on the planning commission. Ms. Wu reached out to me after she reached out to Lisa Castles, informing Lisa that she was moving out of the area. Savannah reached out and said, I'm moving out of the area. And by that time, when I discussed with her kind of options, she had by that time changed her address and had changed her voter registration out of the city of Millwood. From a historic perspective, and that would be from the time when I first joined the Planning Commission back in 2019, we have never on the Planning Commission had a non-resident. Who was that, Bobby?
Guy lived in town, then he moved out to Rockford and stayed on the commission for another
Who was that?
6. I don't remember his name. It was a long time ago.
Okay, it was.
I could find it out. I think.
So from the time, and he stayed on with the full knowledge of the council.
Yes, we talked to the lawyer.
So from the time that I had.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
no, there's never been a non-resident on the planning commission since I've represented the city.
No,
He
I
was
did
there.
Not to my knowledge, not to my knowledge.
Bobby, as long as I have been on the when I started on the planning commission in 2019, we have never had a non-resident. And as a matter of fact, most of the advertisements, and this is just what I want to say to the commission in general, not to argue with Ms. Beasy, but primarily, up until I think the last two advertisements, when we would advertise for a planning commission member, we would say, must be a resident of the city of Millwood. So historic practice has always been, it is a particular and has to be a Millwood resident. Additionally, in our other commission regulations, so historic preservation, board, all that, we specifically spell out as a city requirements for non-residents. So if we are allowing non-residents, we specifically say in the code or in the ordinance, you can be a non-resident. From the planning commission side, although we do not say you can be or cannot be a resident, the tradition, and I will take, the tradition has always been, must be a resident. Must be a resident. And so, if the planning commission, and I have no problems with Savannah. There was not any way to get rid of Savannah. I wish Savannah still lived here. But, and so as Savannah, what I would say is if the planning commission says, hey, we need a larger body or we need Ms. Wu, the council should then confirm whether or not in the ordinance they should specifically say can be or cannot be a resident. It's if that is the desire of the planning commission to specifically say, hey, you don't have to be a resident of the city of Millwood to be on the planning commission, then ask the council. And if the council agrees as the legislative body, I don't see a problem with it. But from where I stood, from my time beginning on the planning commission, 2019, coming to 2019, 1998. Yeah, 1998 was when I started on the planning commission. 1998. Way back when Heather was here as so all the way back. When I started on the planning commission in 98, from 98 until now, nobody has ever been a non-resident. Nobody has ever been a non-resident, Bobby. Not while I've been here since 98.
Come up with the name. It was under Dan Moore.
And
Tom
so
was the planner.
And so I would say that if that happened, I don't remember the council hearing that it was
Well, very possibly not.
Neither was the city attorney. I was not consulted on it.
Maybe it was Tom. Someone looked at the code, said the code does not say that you must be a resident, therefore just keep serving,
and
that's what he did.
And we have always specifically for most of the time called out, when we advertise, you must be a resident. So what I would say is if you folks, if the chair would like to ask the council that be considered as as basically a code change to say, hey man, we want to be able to have these people or retain them if they started and then they move out, to maybe not allow it to be just somebody from the valley or the county or something. Ask the legislative body. But the goal was not to get rid of Savannah. The goal was because the thing was she came to me and said, hey, I'm no longer a resident. And I said the same thing. Well, you still have property here. You still got your driver's license. She's like, no. Changed my voter registration, so I'm not in 4200. I'm not in 4201. I changed my driver's license. And I was like, we don't have non-residents on planning commission. Yes.
I do recall when I came on that there was a robust discussion around cause we did let somebody on a different council, and because of the job, quasi judicial component of the planning commission, they emphasize that. But is there desire on behalf of the commission? Because I could see something like what they were saying, grandfather in like up to a year of moving, so there's a transition period where you guys aren't left short-handed. But for my one last month of being able to vote, I personally would not wanna open up floodgates for residents to be just, anointed in, appointed onto the commission, but I definitely think it's completely reasonable. If someone moves, there's a good year transition period to find another qualified candidate.
So, I think I can speak for my fellow commissioners there in regards to Ms. Wu. There is a desire from this board to have her remain on. I've spoke with Ms. Wu. She has a desire to stay on. Okay. Just the way it shook out, it just wasn't presented like Mayor Freeman just presented it to us. Okay. And I understand the reasoning behind that. What I would like to ask is that in my brief search of the code and city bylaws, I could not find anywhere where it said must be a resident or does, and so I would ask that the council consider codifying that, what the requirement is to be a member of the planning commission. And let's define resident. And does resident mean resident / property owner? Does it mean property owner / business owner? I mean, what constitutes a resident? Is just somebody that's in a rental house? Are they considered a resident? So I think that needs to be well written. I mean, I think that coming forward. I realize that we're not gonna get anything done here tonight. It's a special meeting. It's unfortunate for us that at our last meeting, which was in October, this was discussed. We didn't have a November meeting, and I don't think we have a December meeting coming forward. So I would ask that on one of your next agendas that you consider what the minimum requirements would be. And the only other thing I would ask is I know for myself, for one, I would like to see Ms. Wu reinstated under the stipulation a year, or up to a year. And let me just briefly say why I feel that's important. Okay, we are right in the middle of a comp plan. She's been here from day one, and I hate to say it this way, but if you look at the makeup of the commission, we're planning things for the year 2050. I doubt any of us are gonna be here in 2050, so we need that young person that can see through. I'm just gonna point this out. Bobby, as the senior member of the commission, she's been on this board forever, okay? She knows, so when we have discussions and we're going, well, why in the hell did they do that? She just whips it out and goes, well, this is what our thought process was, and that's invaluable. And you know it from when you were in my chair and everybody else. Having that history is important. So for, not that Ms. Wu will be on the commission for 20 years, but at least currently we will have a young perspective and see what's going forward. So that's what I would ask of you as the city council, is that if you would consider codifying so we know what the minimum requirements are for going forward in the future. Senator.
So your meetings, public meetings, somebody could attend, anybody can attend. And I don't know how restrictive speeches are, but somebody still could attend and still provide input to you. But when it comes time to raise their hand, there's only 4 of you instead of 5 of you raising your hand. Is that my understanding?
Right,
so
right.
She's not kicked out of town. I mean, she left town, she's not kicked out of attending a meeting and participating.
Right, no,
That's a good point.
That's a good point. She was vice chair also, just FYI.
Yeah. So, and I can see some advantages there.
Right.
And on the other hand, I'd kind of hate to see somebody who had no history with Millwood, but I've got eyes on a piece of property that I want to do something with, or bunches of pieces of property, or
Well, what I would say on that is we do have the conflict of interest.
Yeah.
So I mean, if somebody owned a piece of property and there was something coming from the planning commission that they wanted to subdivide, we would certainly make them recuse themselves.
I'd like to know why the chairman of the planning commission wasn't addressed with this issue. Why you solely made the decision on your own without talking to Mike.
So I don't think I made the decision on my own. I said, typically, we do not have. She was talking to Lisa about resigning because she wasn't gonna be in town. She reached out to me, I confirmed that. I was like, we don't usually have that. I didn't reach out to Mike because I figured Savannah would come in and explain, hey, I've moved, I changed my voter registration, it's not a sort of thing where it was something that it was my role to talk to Mike about Savannah being on or off. It was more a historic thing. I thought Savannah was already talking to him about it. I thought Savannah was coming. Nobody from the planning commission reached out to me afterwards or during this and said, hey, what happened here? I didn't know until I watched the tape.
They were, for the record, planning commission was working on a communication to be sent to the mayor. It did not get finalized. We didn't get comments back from the full planning commission to get finalized to come to you for this meeting. So.
Likewise, planning commissioner never contacted me and said, hey, what the hell happened? Savannah and I had about a 15-minute phone conversation where I reiterated to her that we don't have non-residents on the planning commission. Because for all the time that I've been around, people tend to get a little particular about who's sitting on the planning commission when they have a sign permit or a fence permit or a variance or some sort of thing come up on them. They want to know that it's citizens in the city. Yes, I understand that the code does not specifically state that it doesn't have to be a resident, but it also specifically doesn't state that it has to be a resident. And we also go through in the other codes, in the other committees, specific instances where non-residents are allowed. I talked to Savannah and I moved on because I thought Savannah as a member would be talking to the chair saying, hey, I'm moving out. Talked to the mayor, I've talked to the clerk, planning commission isn't typically non-residents, isn't usually non-residents. Was advertised for other things as non-residents. That's why. She did not get the hook. I was trying to figure out a way that she could, in good faith, appear to be a resident. Like Mike was saying, what's a resident? Is it a property owner? Is it somebody who votes here? I mean, if you take the strictest definition, she's not a registered voter. Her primary residence is not in the city of Millwood. She's not a resident. But if she's a property owner and the legislative body says, hey, you own property? That's great. Your property or your primary residence is here, then it's well defined. And you can say that. And then, as you say, somebody can move out and they can stay on. Maybe you put a term limit on there. But I do agree that I don't necessarily think you want to open it up to just say non-residents, because there are oftentimes that it is hard to fill the billets on these certain things. We've gone, I think as Mike remembers, you've gone quite a few months with being short on this. At some time, you get somebody who applies and they meet all the criteria. They're just not a resident. You put them on there because you want 5. So I do think that there needs to be some thought process, but it's not my thought process.
I agree with that. My concern was Savannah's last meeting, she came to the meeting and said, well, this is my last meeting.
And-
Mayor says I no longer be on the planning commission.
And it was,
And that's true, that's.
and I understand that, but at the same time, she was I did not ask the full level of detail of how much communication she had had with her chair as to her living situation and what she was going on. I kind of expected that she was keeping you apprised of the development of the idea that I'm moving out, might not be here. So I'll apologize that this was a surprise to you folks, but I'm not gonna take that one on fully on me because I thought she was keeping the board that she served on apprised of the situation.
Just in interest in time, because technically we're in the city council, I think it's a completely reasonable request to have the clarifications that you desire, and we'll definitely bring that forward in the next quarter.
Thank you.
Anything else? Any other comments? Any member of the commission wanna make any other comments?
Thank you for bringing that up, okay? I wanna applaud you for that, okay? Because as Mr. Worth said, we had a formal document that we were going to present. You cleared it up, and so thank you for that, I appreciate it.
No problem. And what I would say is if somebody would have reached out to me, I would have cleared it up beforehand. I didn't notice it until the tape, and I'll be honest, I got other stuff to do. I'm still trying to dig out from my mom passing away and all that other stuff, and so I watched the meeting because I was interested in what was going on, and then at the end of the meeting, I was like, well, that's odd, because I thought Savannah, I expect that on a board or a commission, that commission members are talking to their chair and apprising them of basically the way they were serving. Now, I don't want Savannah to see this and think that I'm knocking Savannah, because I would really like to have Savannah back. She did a great job. She's energetic, she knows her stuff, she takes an interest, she's dedicated, and it was not, it was one of those ones where I would say I was looking as hard as I could to read that out and basically say, okay, yeah, you can stay because you do a really good job. But at the same time, allowing, as the person who appointed her, who interviewed and appointed her and brought her forward to the council for confirmation, the spirit of the law has always been that the planning commission is made up of Millwood residents. And that's kind of the way that has gone.
That's true.
So Ms. Beesy's statement, exception, but for me to knowingly have somebody on there who was not a resident, I would feel that's not part of the way that when I was, for the last 12 years, when I was out there, we were always looking for residents. And we were always very clear that it was, if you were a non-resident, not coming on. And then to have somebody come in and go, well, now she's a non-resident, particularly with going forward with these development regulations, I do think that whatever is decided here in the future needs to be squeaky clean and needs to be tight and well defined, particularly if it is the decision to go forward with somebody who is not a physical resident of the city. So, as Shauna said, we're moving into council time. So, if there are no further questions, would you like to dismiss your side? And
I will entertain a motion for the adjournment of the special planning commission.
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Meeting adjourned.
Motion to adjourn for the
Motion
council.
to adjourn.
Second. Wait a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Okay, so let's take 5